Hello.
Maybe if I unmute. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
How is everybody's summer going?
Yeah.
We'll wait just a couple more minutes and see where we are.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Tim.
I think we just need 4 for a quorum, and we got 5, so I think we can get started. So it's 2:03. Let me take roll call here. Francine. Ward. So we got 5, so we can get going. I call it order at 2:03. Determine we have a quorum and it's present. Public comments not on the agenda. I can open the meeting to the public. I did have a couple people call over the last couple months and wanting to attend publicly. And I gave them the date, but I don't see them here. But I thought that was kind of fun that somebody actually was curious about this committee.
Actually knew it existed.
Yeah, knew it existed, right? So I don't see any public comment. So we'll go to item 3. Approval minutes from our last meeting, June 1st. We had a glitch in our technical system, so we weren't able to give you guys those minutes. So we'll table that for our next meeting. So our next meeting will have the minutes from this meeting and our June 1st meeting. Item 4, staff reports and information from staff. I think one thing I'd like to start off with is from Parks. I did get a call from Parks Department. I think they're having their meeting today also. And I wanted to see how our 2 representatives are doing, or how that's going from Parks. I don't know if they had a report out to us.
They did get the draft of their survey and all the what do you call it, the different meetings they've had and the comments and requests they had. They got that out to us. The draft was a little incomplete, and yeah, but that's what we're meeting to. We're reviewing that and meeting about that tonight.
Okay, so it's happening tonight.
Mhm.
Okay. So we maybe get a report out for our next meeting. I don't have any additional park or rec update.
John, can I comment?
Oh, yes, absolutely,
okay.
Ashley.
I haven't read the updated draft yet, but at our last meeting, I was concerned about how they were prioritizing the accessibility work, because they were going facility by facility rather than programmatically throughout the city. And so I was concerned that that's not going to be meeting the city's obligations for programmatic access.
I'm still concerned.
Okay.
I read through the draft, and I mean, there was like page after page after page before they mentioned accessibility. And then there's a call out on it specifically, but it's not like part of the vision and mission. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to comment on that tonight.
Yeah, definitely do that. Bring it to their attention.
It's brought up on a per park basis, as you say, Ashley, in the different pages on each park. But yeah, I think it's not part of the central vision, or it's not expressed as that.
Yeah, and it really should be, I would think, in my mind. I will also bring it up to their parks director. I've made the note here, Ashley.
Okay.
So I talk to her about once a week. I'll make sure I bring that up. They do have a change of park directors, as you may know. I think that occurred almost a year ago. Okay, for public works update, I know they're doing some street improvements along 3rd and 4th. I know I've been called out to give my opinion on a couple ADA issues. But I haven't really heard very much from parks, from public works. I'm supposed to have a meeting with them in 2 weeks. One thing that we are moving forward with is we keep getting complaints on our handrail systems here at City Hall. And usually the complaint is that they don't meet code. And if you go back to the 61 code, they kind of meet the code, although I think I could make an argument one way or the other, but giving the benefit of the doubt of how the code might be interpreted in 61, I think they do actually meet code. However, I think the point is, and what people are trying to emphasize is it's not really accessible, right? And we have obligation to remove barriers. So I think the manager's office, while they were maybe reluctant to look at all our railing systems here at City Hall, they agree that we should start with the railing from the accessible parking space into our lobby, and probably the railing system from our parking lot onto Mission. At least get those in place. And then we could look at the railings going from the upper parking lot to the lower parking lot, and our railings on the monument staircase in front. Monument staircases back in 61 didn't require any railings. So I'm kind of thinking the handrails out there are more decorative than actual functional, but maybe we would also put handrails out there so somebody from the street could come up the stairs if they desired. So I'm trying to get a timeline from DPW of when we could expect them to start construction on those handrails from the parking lot to the lobby and from the parking lot to Mission. So
Can I-
hopefully that will be forthcoming and will be a good step in the right direction.
Can I make a comment about
Yes.
handrails, Don? When I use them, I need one on the left. And so going up, usually I go up the left side of the stairs, and coming down, I come down what would be the right side of the stairs looking from the outside. And this is not uncommon. A lot of people need one on a particular side. So if there is room to put one in the middle as well, it helps with traffic, because I end up going up stairs, against people coming down the stairs a lot of times.
Okay,
mean,
that's a good
I
suggestion.
mean, it's just, it's helpful to have them like that, unless it's a really narrow, stair area. But my recollection of the front of the city hall is that it's a broad set of
The
steps.
front,
Is that
we
correct?
definitely can do that. It's monumental. We have, I think we're even required now under the current code to put an intermediate railing because it's so wide. The back stairs coming down from the parking lot into the lobby, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
what
those
the-
are not as broad as I recall. Yeah,
Okay.
those are harder to, but anyway.
Right, and I think we could also update our accessibility signage from Fifth Street. I don't know if all the signs are in place that leads you from the front sidewalk around the building to the upper parking lot into that back door. I think one of the signs might be missing. And so we were going to look at that too, to make sure that posted route is still intact. And I think we also might have a sidewalk curb that might be popping up from a tree root. So we might need to grain that off too. And I'm hoping we can do all that under one project for the handrails, so we can at least get that patched up. I also, not that it affects this committee so much, but I just wrote a 5-page with 64 items, potential items of accessibility on the new Kaiser office medical building out on Las Gamas. And next to, I think, the county commons area out there. And we had a accessibility activist come and complain. And so I met with him on site with Kaiser's reps, and we went through his 34 items. About 1/3 of the items are technically code violations. About 1/3 of the items, considering the building is existing and a bunch of other factors, may not be really code violations or are not code violations, but might need a little more research. And then 1/3 of the 34 items were clearly not code violations. They might be actually very good to have. And Kaiser can choose to pursue those if they desire, but they aren't the minimum building code. One example of that is on the signage going into their parking garage, their new parking garage. He felt that there should be the ISA symbol, so people driving by knew that these were accessible parking garages. I couldn't find anything under Chapter 11 that required that as part of that signage. But I do understand his point, and it would be good to know. And they do have really nice accessible parking spaces inside to direct people that way, instead of maybe other parking areas around that campus that might be less desirable. And then I said about 1/3 were code violations, but most of those occurred after we gave them the certificate of occupancy. So a lot of those have to do with the traditional garbage can being moved in the bathroom next to the door, so you don't have that clear wheel space next to it. And a few other violations were in that nature. It's a maintenance issue. And Kaiser's aware of it, and they're promised to do better on it. Then we had a couple other doors that maybe the closures aren't working and it requires more pounds to open them and close them. They may have been working fine when we gave them a C of O, but now it's been over, I think it's almost been 2 years. And maybe they're just out of adjustment or the cylinder has failed. We did have 2 code items that we did miss. Although we had a lot of help in missing them, in that they weren't clearly shown on the approved set of drawings that were done by our third party. One of those is a protection for wheels on the ramp. They ended up on the landscape plans, they designed the handicap ramp from the parking garage to the sidewalk. And they placed the handrails inside that ramp with posts or columns. And they didn't provide any guards along the bottom to keep the wheels from hitting those. So that wasn't clearly shown on the landscape plans. It should have been on the architectural plans, but it wasn't. Our consultant missed it, my inspector missed it. He thought because the ramp looked like it was less than 1 in 15 that we didn't need it. He did see it, but he didn't understand the nuance on that part of the code. And then the other item that the city missed, not necessarily the building department, but the fire department allowed the fire pull arms to be the old style T-bar or a T where you kind of put your fingers in and pull. They do have a new one that's kind of a duck bill. So you can just push down on it. And the codes clearly indicate, both under the building code and particularly under the fire code, that those should be accessible and be upgraded. And those are actually a pretty easy fix. The little T-bar can be removed by a certified technician, and a duckbill T-bar can be put in. And so you don't have to grasp or use your fingers. And I totally agree. I think that's a very good suggestion. The reason I bring this particular incident up is I know at City Hall, we also have that type of alarm detection. And I'm suggesting that they go through and replace those, and we should replace those throughout our facilities when we find them, that everybody should be able to pull a fire alarm if they need assistance or in case of emergency. So that was a really good exercise. I actually brought one of my inspectors with me out there. And it was a good 1.5 hour education from this activist. And I really liked it in a way that it was practical. You could see what was working and not working instead of like in a classroom environment. Even though I think some of the people that were on that tour was a little less appreciative. Anyway, that was a really good lesson. We also are working on some safety issues that maybe aren't directly accessible. 2 years ago, we had a child that was killed at one of the private schools here when a vehicle gate, a manual vehicle gate, came off the hinges. I've been in conversation with him, his father, and their consultant, and we're looking to adopt in the next code cycle here, probably in November, a standard for these manual gates. And I think we're going to take it also one step further, where we're going to require property owners to certify every 5 years that their gates have been inspected and are in good working order and meet the code. ASTM is currently working on that standard, and if they don't have that standard in place when we adopt the code, I already have their draft language for what they're looking for. We'll adopt that directly into the code and wait for the standard to be developed. Reason I bring this up is we have also seen recently some automatic gates being installed. And I think in the past, and I think this is pretty typical of most building departments, we kind of give a little bit of lip service about these gates needing to be UL listed and ASTM listed. And I don't think anybody, including the installers, really knows what that means. Usually we get some literature on the gate operator and it says it's UL 325 or ASTM F2200. But what does that really mean, right? And trying to access those standards can be rather expensive. I think UL wanted to charge me $1,000 to access their 325. and ASTM wanted $64 a pop on their standards. And then even when you get the standards, they're very, very technical and hard to read. So what I ended up doing is I did a bunch of research and I came up with a checklist that I think is pretty good that we can give to the contractor of what we're looking for when we look at these automatic gates. And I'm planning on doing a checklist for the manual gates also. And we just did an inspection just recently here in San Rafael, and I think they only had about half the check items on that list. You know, it was a good try, but they didn't cross the T's and dot the I's. And so we're trying, so I'm also working on an idea that maybe we can convert it into some sort of little app that they can go through the checklist. And the thing I like about the app, it can give them real life examples of what we're talking about. Like one of the examples was you're not supposed to have any protrusions 1.5 inches from the leading edge, bottom edge, or trailing edge of the gate. Those would be like maybe if you had pickets. If you had pickets, it's okay if the pickets stick up above the gate, but they can't stick below the bottom rail. And so if we had some examples and some maybe backup supporting documents, I think those inspections and those would be a lot safer for the community. And then when I was thinking about it and going out on this Kaiser, I was thinking the same way that, you know, we should have maybe some sort of document that a contractor can have, like on an app on his phone, that he can look and see what the handrails or the ramps are. And he can kind of have like a checklist that the city could then double check, really, right? Reason I bring that up is that one of the automatic gates that we did recently here in San Rafael also had a ton of ADA accessible items, and nothing was right on those. The handrails on the stairs were wrong. The handicap parking space was wrong. They poured new concrete for accessible pathway, and it's wrong. And, you know, it's kind of too late once the concrete's poured. I mean, it's not too late for us. We'll enforce the code, but it is costly for them to fix it. And I'm not smiling and joke. I'm just, sometimes I'm surprised that we have contractors who hold themselves out and say they do this work all the time, and we're the first ones to call them out on a handrail, when clearly the handrail does not meet the code under any circumstance. It just baffles my mind. But those are kind of private projects, but I think there's some lessons there we can learn and maybe apply it to what we're doing here.
Do we reach out to contractors? I mean, I know we've talked about this before about educating. Do we like send out a list of this is what you need? I mean, your idea of an app is a really good idea because they'd have it right there on their phone. But I just wondered if there's any outreach, like there's I think there are a couple of contractors organizations that might distribute information where you wouldn't have to like actually go to every contractor yourself.
Right.
But
I was also, I think we can do that. We can put together documentations. I think I have some tools that we use internally that we can probably polish a little bit for the public or for the contractor's consumption. Before the pandemic, we were trying to get in the habit of doing 3 times a year, like a code and coffee. And my predecessor, I think, did that periodically too, where we would invite contractors or the public to the chambers, and we would put on a presentation or education session. One of those I'm thinking about with the rollout of the new city code on manual gates is to do a manual and automatic gate code and coffee. But I was also thinking at the same time, maybe we should do something with accessibility, at least maybe get some of the basic concepts down about what we're looking for: a parking space, the accessible path to the front door, the handrails, the ramps, you know, what we will be looking for.
you know, particularly concrete contractors, there are not that many of them. I mean, you know, it's not like there aren't as many concrete contractors as there are like carpentry contractors, building contractors.
Right, and then we've also noticed recently, again, I'm smiling because half of them didn't come in and get permits, but we've seen where people have repaved or restriped their parking lots. And we have one down here on the corner of 4th and D. I think it's Cafe Soul. It's a little wrap sandwich shop. Anyway, there's a floor shop in that little shopping complex, and there's a couple parking spaces there. They went from a couple parking spaces to like 7 parking spaces, and there's no drive aisle in between them. And just before this meeting, I was down there again, perplexed, because I told the contractor this was a problem 2 weeks ago and he was supposed to come in and get a permit. He had not. So I was getting a little irritated. Just so happens the owner hired a company who hired a CAS, and the CAS just showed up when I was leaving. And I thought he was a contractor, so I introduced myself, and he said, no, he's a CAS, and he came out to look at the parking space. I go, well, don't think the city approved this, because we haven't. It's done without a permit. But we've had several parking spaces or parking lot areas. That's probably the smallest one that have modified in strange ways their existing handicap parking spaces and stuff. And so we've gigged them and required them to come in and get a permit. One that did get a permit to start with, but their plans were, we thought the plans looked pretty good, what they submitted, but it didn't include the elevation differences in the parking lot. It was kind of just 2-dimensional. Was Sears, or it was a Safeway. And so we're working with Safeway with correcting some of their accessibility issues out there. The problem with that is they thought all they were doing was restriping the parking lot, and they didn't have to do anything for accessibility. So some of their existing accessibility spots were not right to begin with. We suspect that maybe some of them were added somewhere along the line, so they might not have been original. In fact, we're pretty sure 2 of them were added and never permitted. So they're working with us right now to try to resolve that at Safeway.
Is that Safeway Northgate?
This is Safeway downtown.
Oh.
Right. And the last update I have that might be more relevant to this committee is I did finally talk to somebody, I think her name's Cindy, down at the San Rafael post office. And she says that they know they have a deficiency. They're waiting on GSA, which I think they're government service agency, to do evaluation and recommendations of upgrading that. And I think she mentioned that they were also looking to do the same thing at the Bellum post office. So we might get a twofer when they get to it, but she realizes that they don't really have good accessibility. The only thing she offered to me, and I didn't even know, and it's really not relevant in a lot of ways, but I guess they do have a drive-through drop-off on Smith Ranch Road, or
The Lucas Valley side, yeah.
yeah, Lucas Valley side.
Lucas Valley?
It's between Miller Creek Road and Los Camos. It's right off of Las Colinas.
A little
Yeah.
out of the way for downtown San
Oh,
Rafael.
absolutely.
It is, yeah.
I mean, they have a drive up across the street from Bellum, in front of the, the shopping center there. So you can pull in there and, drive up to that one.
Yeah, I saw that one too, and they recently got a permit for the parking lot and refacing the buildings there. And that was not on their drawings. And I think DPW would have an issue with that because it's right in the drive lane as you're entering.
Exactly. People can pass you if you're really careful, if you pull up really close.
If you're really careful, right? Yeah.
But it's not supposed to be a 2-lane drive.
No, so I'm actually talking to that landlord to see if maybe we could just move it in a little different location. So people, when I was there, it was during kind of like rush hour. So a lot of people were trying to turn into that shopping mall.
Mhm.
And I think that could be a problem, but, yeah, I saw that too.
As long as they realize that it needs to be on the driver's side.
Right, and I made
That's
that
been
clear
the
with the
problem
post
with a lot
office.
of them.
Yeah, once we changed our directions on our streets in downtown, it took away that option, so. But I got her contact information. I was gonna share it with you guys, but I don't have it here in my desktop at the moment, but I will get that information to you. And she was very pleasant. She seemed to acknowledge that they have an issue. They're waiting for their design to evaluate their facility. So that's about all I have. Let me see what else is on the agenda. Think we're kind of on hold for everything else. Updating our facilities, we're kind of, part of that is waiting on parks. And in the other facilities in the city, we're still working to get some funding, which I don't think is an issue. Probably the biggest problem will be finding a consultant that can do that work. You know, a lot of, I've found, I don't think it's a problem here in San Rafael, but it seems like whatever we do and we hire consultants, sometimes I don't feel like they do a very good job for the city, whether it's looking at our fee structures or traffic patterns, or maybe a little bit like your experience at parks, that didn't seem very clear in their documents. We've also had that with some of our planning codes and changes, that the documents aren't quite what we were expecting. So that's one of my fears, but I think, you know, we can probably do a pretty good job interviewing them and finding maybe the right consultant that fits best with us and getting those documents updated. I guess I can open it up to the group. Did anybody want to bring up any issues or anything they've seen around in the city that I should be aware of? Do you want to start, Ashley, and we'll go around? Or
Nothing really comes to mind. My favorite parking spot in town is the Bank of America access aisles that have the curbs going right down the middle of it in the parking garage.
yeah, so that parking garage, I actually have, because during the pandemic, they closed off the accessible door from the parking garage area. So you had to go all the way around the building, and there wasn't an easy way to do that. Especially when they have a ISA symbol on that door, and then they lock it up or close it. And then I think they were saying that they weren't going to reopen it for crime reasons. And so I sent a letter to them saying that they need to rethink that. But I lived right across the street there, and I noticed all those trip hazards in that parking lot area.
I can't even think where B of A is because we're not B of A people. Where is it?
It's a tall building downtown where the old courthouse was.
Okay.
If the Arizmendi pedestrian plaza.
Oh, yeah. I know where that is.
Yeah, so there's the parking garage on 5th.
Right.
And there's like 4 or 5 accessible spaces with 6-inch concrete curbs that go right down the middle of the access aisles.
Yeah, I'll take a picture and bring it next time on that. How about Tim Park? Did you have?
Well, I think there's a similar curb in the garage going the other way behind like the Indian restaurant back there. I recall just off the sidewalk. Then there's another curb in a little ways. But that's not what I really wanted to mention.
Okay.
Over at the Los Gamos, I've gone past that a couple times on my hand cycle, so I'm kind of at the same perspective as a wheelchair there when I'm on that. And regularly, I run into those COVID testing signs that are just completely in the sidewalk. I have to stop, get off, move it out of the way. I don't know, you know, I mean, people are setting them up every day, I guess, but they're regularly set up on the sidewalks and completely blocking it. Especially once you get on Los Comos, it's not as bad on Lucas Valley, but I wonder if that's happening at other testing sites too.
Yeah, we have an ongoing fight with those A-frames in downtown
Mhm.
with the restaurants and stores too, that they block accessibility. I got the ear of Kaiser, so we're having a meeting next week on those 34 items. I'll make a note about their signage too.
I don't think this is Kaiser's testing. I think it's the one in the lot further down. I can't remember the name of the service, but I think it's a third party.
Okay, I know this
Um,
is adjacent parking lot to the parking garage there, right?
Yes, yes.
Might be curative. They have
Here, that's it.
several different testing sites.
Yeah, it's
They probably
curative.
just don't think about it, you know, the people that run it can be different people from day to day, and it'll be like just some lab guy, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, and I by the time I get home, I've had enough distractions that I forget, and I forgot it happened until you mentioned it, and then I should probably carry some paper and I could mark on it. Please don't put this back in the street or back in the sidewalk.
Right, I think it's just education. I don't think a lot of
Yeah.
people understand. Even the people in Kaiser were a little less receptive than I thought they would be, especially since they're in a medical environment and they may have a lot of people with challenges entering the facility and using their facility. One of the things that we're looking at that isn't a code violation, but they could probably do something better, is in that north parking lot. They get a lot of traffic in and off Los Gamos, and there's no truncated domes along the public sidewalk. And that public sidewalk is kind of a little bit on a berm.
Mhm.
And there's some transition problems from the public sidewalk into the old site sidewalk. And so I was suggesting in one of the diagrams I gave them is perhaps if they pulled it back to a level area on the asphalt, very similar to the shopping center at Bellum, that we could fix the transition issues from public to private. And it would also give a little bit more distance and a better surface for people to cross that driveway. We could also have truncated domes, and it would also give a few more feet for somebody turning quickly off that road to see somebody traversing the driveway. I don't know if they'll go with it. Like I said, it's not technically a code violation, but it's something that they should be looking
Mhm.
at. How about the other Tim Lord?
No, I don't have anything right now, but it's good to be back. So
Okay,
I'll keep my eyes open.
perfect. And how about Francine?
Oh, well, one thing I want to say, Don, is I want to acknowledge you for handling so many details. I know this is in addition to your regular job, and boy, there's a lot. I mean, I was just thinking about what you said about the complaints about a wastebasket being too close to the door for wheelchairs. And people want them close to the doors now because they want to like take a paper towel to open the door because everyone's more conscious of flus and colds and how that all gets spread. So you want a wastebasket near the door. I've actually moved wastebaskets near the door, you know, but I mean, I just appreciate how many details you're trying to handle here for this particular issue. And I know it's not the only issue that you have to handle.
Appreciate that.
So thank you.
Well, and one of those items too at Kaiser is the way the architect designed the accessible parking spaces is they have the sign kind of at the end of the parking spot, just beyond the wheel stop, about 2 feet beyond the wheel stop. Well, I think people have some cars that overhang more than 2 feet. So they kept hitting these signs and they've all fallen. Half of them are gone. They're not there anymore. And so they said they would put them back up. And I go, well, let's try to be smart. Maybe don't put them right there. Maybe there's a sidewalk right there. So maybe you can put it on the backside of the sidewalk, maybe in the landscaping at the end of the stall so you could see it. And then I think Kaiser, one of the other ones they had is they took down all the $250 penalty signs in the parking garage because they didn't want to penalize their patrons. And I told them the building code really didn't distinguish between private or public parking that the 250 is required. They did have the tow sign there, who to call if your car got towed, but they didn't have the fine sign there.
It was funny you would mention that because I was at Il Fornaio for lunch a couple of weeks ago, and someone had parked in the closest DP spot to the entrance of the restaurant, and there's like 3 or 4 DP spots, and they pulled all the way into the shrubbery. So they blocked the sidewalk that is for wheelchairs to come down, you know.
Oh.
I put a note on the windshield, and I mean, the person had a DP placard, and it just was apparent that they were just not a very good driver, but it was there for 3 or 4 hours. And I tried to call the police department to ask them to, like, you know, find the person to move the car or whatever. And I got sent through all these different voicemails and put on hold, and I just gave up on it. But I mean, if the wheel stop at the end of that was easy for the person to just drive right past it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and one thing that was kind of interesting for us is when we were out there, the activist had his van with a wheelchair lift on the side. And so he demonstrated why the van space and that side aisle is so important. And my inspector, you know, we enforce that. It's pretty easy to do. It's 12 feet and then 5 feet for the side aisle, or any combination where it could be like 9 and 8. But sometimes we don't like 9 and 8 because that looks kind of like a parking spot, and then you find somebody parking in the aisle, right? But 12 and 5 is ideal. And my inspector, who enforces that and is well aware of it, was surprised on how far that lift goes from the van, and how you know, he was pulled way over in the parking space, how far it goes out. And then if you go out the end of that lift, you still need some maneuver space. And the activist was indicating that with his lift, he has a unique feature where he can, forget if it hits a lever, but one of the other edges of the lift will fold down. So he doesn't always need to go off the end of that lift. He can go off the side, but he says that's not very common.
Yeah, well, even if you're not in a wheelchair and you're using crutches, you still need to be able to open your driver's side door pretty wide to be able to get in and out of the car. I've had people pull up, like, you know, in the normal parking space kind of area, you know, pull up so close to the DP spot that I couldn't get back in my car, you know. I mean,
and I think the people that
understand.
were there for Kaiser were also kind of an eye-opening for him, like, wow, that does take up a lot of space. You know, those aisles, that space we have out there parking. How about you, Diane? Do you have anything for us? You're on mute. Let me see if I can unmute you.
Here,
There you go.
I do not have anything at the moment, but
Okay.
thank you, Don, also. You've got a huge number of things covered. It's great.
It's really too much for one person. I feel like I'm dropping balls.
Yeah,
But, we'll try to get some help. I think we all have those challenges in hiring. I know we've been looking for front counter personnel and code enforcement officers for a while now. And it's just hard to find people with the right qualifications and the fit. But you know, we all are faced that, right? You go to the restaurant and they're short-staffed. My mechanic says he's short-staffed. He's offering a $5,000 signing bonus if you go work for him as a mechanic. It seems like everybody's short. If there's nothing else, hi, John.
Oh,
Hey, how are you doing?
well, hanging in there.
Great. So we were just finishing up and we were wondering if, I was just asking if anybody had any issues that they've seen around the city regarding accessibility or wanted to share anything with us.
Absolutely nothing from me.
Okay,
Hey, Don,
yes.
did you work out the closed captioning on Zoom? I see that it's not on right now.
Yes, we ended up figuring out, did I copy you
Okay.
on that email?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Right.
So we
I
ended
just
up
noticed that I wasn't on.
figuring out, it was, I can't remember the long story, but I was on the clerk's account. And it was a certain type of account and you had to do it. I don't know if her account could do it, but they said if we upgraded to a new account, it would do it. So they, Danielle in my office, signed us up for a new account and assured me that it was automatic and I wouldn't have to do anything. So thanks for bringing that up and I will point that out. But we got it to a point where we can now use that for these types of meetings. But I think it had something to do with the clerk's version that we had previously, and this was supposed to work. So I will figure that out for next time. Thank you. Caption. Seems like there was one other thing on the. Oh, our meetings. So I was thinking that probably December, well, we can have a discussion on this. But I thought definitely for December, we would continue with Zoom. And then probably for the first meeting in 2023, perhaps we could look at a hybrid or continue with Zoom. I know a couple of our other members who haven't attended have not attended because of their hearing. And they wanted to meet in person. So we could look at maybe doing a hybrid in that first meeting in March. And maybe we can discuss it more in December. But if it's okay with everybody, I would think we just finish this year out on Zoom. And
Yeah.
then, and I think there is some benefits to Zoom. It saves you travel time. So maybe you can fit this meeting in with your busy schedule. I know it helps. It helps me because I don't have to get another conference room and I don't have to schedule another thing. But we can maybe discuss it more at December, see what the feel is for the group. And I will talk to Fred Devine and Ewan, and see what their feelings are. They're the two that were citing hearing issues.
Okay.
Do you have any ideas on that, Ashley? I don't know if there's a way they could, I don't know if Zoom or your computer allows you to plug in a listening device or.
Well, Zoom has the closed captioning and transcription. It's not great.
But
like-
maybe it's a help. Maybe it helps.
But it's a help, and I know people who use it. The chair that we have on our design review board is Australian, and the translation that comes up with her is kind of hilarious. But I've been told by a lot of people that they just rely on that, and then also lip reading. So
Yeah, I'm embarrassed that we didn't have it working today. I thought we had that nailed and I didn't check on it before I started up this morning, so.
I have a hearing deficit and I wear hearing aids. And today I can hear everybody except Ashley. Her sound sounds very muffled to me compared to what it has been in the past. But I mean, generally it's been, I mean, I guess if your hearing problem is more acute or you don't have hearing aids, then it may be really a problem. But the sound was pretty good today for most everyone else.
Great. Okay, so that's it. Our next meeting will be December 7th at 2 o'clock, the first Wednesday of the month. And I'm hoping to have more progress and maybe updates from the post office. If you guys have any thoughts during the next couple months, please email them to me and I'll see if I can't follow up with them time permitting. If that's it, we will see you guys in December.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll put down that we'll adjourn at 2:49. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.